Over a year ago, I got into film photography. After years of just shooting photos with a digital SLR, my only film experience before that was just the occasional disposable camera in the 90s, early 2000s, but working at a camera store with some readily available film stocks kind of grew the temptation, and eventually I caved. And when I picked up the hobby, I felt instantly transformed. And it was a few months later when I was looking at a thrift store, I found this camera for just a cool $15. It was pretty sleek looking, it winded, the shutter fired, it seemed like a good buy. And little did I know that I had just stumbled upon a true gem in the 35mm camera world. Production on this original version of the Rollei 35 first began in 1966 and went on till 1974. So this one here, without me knowing the date, it's at least 50 years old, if not maybe 58 years old. Not bad for something that's still winding and firing. It was the smallest, most compact 35mm film camera until 1996 when the Minolta TC1 came out. And like I said, this is the original Rollei 35. There was variations such as the Rollei 35S. That one came out in 1981. It offered a slightly faster aperture of f2.8 compared to this one that opens up widest at f3.5. So there was a couple other variations as well. So obviously they liked the design because they kept going with it for about 15 years with different variations. And then this one here was made in Singapore. They also manufactured them in Germany. This one being from Singapore though, it was one of 215,000 made. A little while later, someone mentioned to me that the Rollei 35 was a camera that, well, one of the cameras that Stanley Kubrick used, the famous film director, and that there was kind of an iconic photo of him holding the Rollei 35. And sure enough, a little while later, I needed a staff photo for work, and so with the help of a couple buddies, we made a pretty good homage to the photo. Not too bad, eh? And now, the Rollei 35 certainly does come with some of its own quirks due to its small size. And one of those things that's immediately apparent is that the hot shoe mount is actually located on the bottom of the camera. They did make an external flash that was kind of a block that sat here, so a little different than the norm of having a flash on top. Not something that really bothered me anyways because I had no intention of getting an external flash for this, but definitely a quirk of the camera. Another thing is, the light meter is located right under my finger. See, I naturally want to cover that light meter to hold it comfortably, but I need the light meter not covered so that it'll give me a nice measurement so that I can expose my shot according to what the light meter will tell me. So that's another thing that kind of works against you from the design. Also, this camera, it's a viewfinder camera, so I don't actually look through the lens, I look through the viewfinder up here, meaning that I can't see focus in the lens. So what you have to do is called range focus. There's different increments on the lens, and you have to guess, is that person about 10 feet away from me? Okay, I'll put that roughly about 10 feet, and you kind of hope that you get your focus. It can be tricky when you're running and gunning and trying to get something quick. And also, since it's a viewfinder camera, you don't actually see any light meter indication in the optics, so you kind of have to look on top at the light meter above, you know, make your adjustments, then recompose. So it just kind of doesn't have the fluid and quick experience of a modern camera. Oh, and also, the light meter battery for the camera, it actually goes inside the camera underneath where the film roll sits. So if your light meter battery runs out halfway through shooting a roll, you're pretty much stuck finishing that roll without a light meter because you can't pop it out and change it without exposing your roll. And if that wasn't enough for you, the light meter also doesn't have an on-off switch. So while it's revealed and exposed to light, it's draining that battery. There are a couple workarounds. You can carry it in a case where it's sealed in the dark. That's one way to get around that, so it'll relieve the battery from running its power. Also, you could get online, some people are 3D printing a little slide tab that goes over this part. I tried one myself. It was a little wonky, ended up taking it off. Another thing you can do, this was suggested by a friend of mine, just have a little piece of black electrical tape with a fold that you can quickly pull open and close, and that'll help you from draining the battery on this guy. But all that light meter stuff didn't matter for me anyways, because it turned out mine had an inaccurate light meter. It needed further calibration, so I was basically stuck having to meter by eye with this thing. And that added to the experience itself, because I had to adopt the Sunny 16 rule. Now the Sunny 16 rule works basically where you look at the box speed of the film, the ISO or the ASA, and you match your shutter speed as closely to that number as you can. On the Rollei 35, I have my higher shutter speeds are 250 and 500, so if it's a 400 box of film, I'll actually put it to 250, because if I have to either overexpose or underexpose, with film I like to just a little bit overexpose. And then basically how it works is, if it's a bright sunny day, you shoot at f16. You shoot at f11 if it's a bit of sun and cloud, and then kind of full but still kind of light cloud, you shoot at f8. And then f5.6 is when you're kind of into full overcast, a little more dark. So right now, I would probably shoot at about f8 or f11. What I often found myself doing with this camera though is I would kind of be slowing down and working out in my head, okay, if I have to shoot at f16, how about I crank my shutter speed up a stop so that I can at least open up to f11, because the thing is, we don't like shooting at f16 all the time, because that's when so much is in focus and our pictures don't really pop the same because things are a little dull. And you know what, actually, loading film into this camera is actually pretty easy compared to some of these other film cameras. Let's cut to a different countertop. Okay, so to start, I release that tab at the bottom, and that'll unlock the camera so that I can take the back off. First I open that little tab there, and then I put in the canister over here, and now I'll pull the leader of the film. That's just kind of the skinnier part at the very end. And I want to put as much of that through the take-up spool as I can. So I usually jam it in there, maybe get half of the leader in there, and that's usually good enough. Perfect. And then this is where I kind of just smooth things out a bit. Sometimes I push a little bit of film back into the canister just to kind of get things flush there, because I don't want it all loose before I package it back up. And then the next thing I'll be looking for is having some of these perforations catch some of the teeth there. And that looks like it'll be okay. And then from that point, I'm able to close this little door. So that's what's handy about the Rollei. It has that little door that flops over and kind of keeps things still for you. And then I give it a wind and a fire of the shutter. And then, yeah. Oh, and this one has a little bit of quirk. Sometimes I gotta change the shutter speed or else my winder jams. There we go. And that's probably enough of those, just a couple of them, and then I can close it up. I know things are moving properly inside there. Lock the bottom again. And now this is where I kind of watch the counter down here. So fire, wind, and I take a look. I'm still not at my first shot. Fire and wind. And I'm probably good there. Might get a bonus shot out of this roll. We'll see. And yeah, and my Rollei has even another quirk where sometimes the winder jams, but it seems if I change the aperture, it unjams. So, and then I can retract the lens back. And there, it's loaded and ready to go. So yeah, I used this camera casually for about a year. Shot maybe 5 or 6 rolls through it, and a lot of it was like expired high ISO film that I'd gotten for free, so a lot of grainy stuff came out of this one, and I definitely found some soft photos from trying to do that range focusing in a hurry, trying to get a shot too quick and not getting the right amount of feet measured in there. So that happens, but it's part of the experience. You know, I also shot some Ilford XP2 through it though, and this is kind of a nice film, and it was recommended for a camera that doesn't have a light meter because it's got a wide exposure latitude, so a little more forgiving. It's kind of a neat film too because it's C41 process black and white. C41's typically for color film, so you can send this to the color lab, which for me worked out to a lower developing cost for a black and white film, which is cool. You know, I also shot out of the Canon A1. I definitely got better pictures out of this because, you know, better ease of manual control, working light meter, but it just didn't have the same kind of cool factor as the Rollei 35, throw it in your pocket little camera. Yeah, so overall the Rollei 35 is a pretty cool, slick little kind of James Bond-like camera, and it's a great conversation piece.